Yeah, so we are super happy to be here and to have a talk for like 15 to 20 minutes and then go into the questions, because we all know that just getting some presentation and then shouting off wouldn't be the appropriate way to have such a topic handled. And I'm really happy to be here with Laurenz, my co-founder, and we together founded Re-Engage. And this is because we thought membership organizations could be the backbone of a democratic society. In Germany, we have 60 million people being member of an association, but the lived practice is not always super democratic. And what we see is that those organizations rarely use their biggest potential, actually. And this is the passive members. And we now talk from our experience in Germany, where the associations are set up slightly different than in the UK. So we will have to now the sentence is gone. So we have to do some transfers for your context, which we are happy to do so when we have the dialogue. So to really dive into that and not doing frequently through the whole presentation. First, who are the two guys you are listening to for the next 15 to 20 minutes? Laurenz, you want to say something?
Yeah, happy to kick it off. So prior to co-founding Community Council and now re-engage together with Ilan, I've been working mostly in the realm of citizen engagement and helped implement citizens assemblies from small communities up to the European level for the European Commission and also the national level here in Germany. And before that, I worked mostly in evidence-based policymaking and behavioral policymaking for the World Bank and the European Commission as well. And I did study in the UK for my master's. So I'm particularly excited for this call and studied psychology and politics back in the days. Ilan, how about yourself?
Yes, I'm Ilan. I got into this topic 10, 12 years ago after doing sports and politics in parties and associations as well. I thought that's super interesting that always the same 2% are super active in every kind of membership organization and the rest is not. And then I fall in love with this idea of sortition, so lottery-based participation, which got rather famous through the process in Ireland with the citizens' assemblies. I assume most of you know about it. Otherwise, this will be another good talk for you guys. And afterwards thinking, the most and tremendous change which happens there is not just the content which is produced and the recommendations and stuff, but people going through this process and creating more trust into democratic decision-making and also develop more democratic strength and capabilities. And then the question was obvious: how can we scale that this experience is made by many, many people? And Laurenz and I thought, okay, it would be super smart to do it in membership organizations because they challenge similar problems as the parliaments do. And we say it's always the same few who do stuff, even though there's newsletters, there's events and meetings, usually only reach the already actives. And it's not too many. The passive majority is never in the room. It's a bit harder than it is in reality, but to make the points clear, sometimes it's helpful to stretch it a bit. What we experienced, especially in German associations, is that roles remain vacant. So they rarely find new coaches who are willing to train young children or also the adult ones. They don't find people for the board of the associations or people running projects. And here also, those who are active are getting really old and older, so that the average age in this association is also increasing big time, and this is not a good sign for future readiness in our point of view. And there's too little real identification with the organization. So they do sports, but nowadays, I don't know if you have it in the UK, we have like Urban Sports, which is an app, so you don't have to be a member of an organization anymore, but you're a complete customer of the sport offer, and the whole community thing is gone completely. And this also has to do with the identification of the people with the with the association itself. So what we wonder is how, and that's why we are so happy to are also in good conversation with you guys from New Citizens Project, is how can we get people from being passive consumers to active members, or how you would call it, from members to citizens. I think we rather mean the same thing with that. And what would change when today's mostly passive members start shape their organization and support implement strategic initiatives? And we do this with chambers of commerce, with cooperatives, with all kind of organizations. But today, because that was such a lovely process, we would love to give you some insights to our work with young people in two Berlin football and sports associations.
And an interesting challenge that we faced when we were first approached by those two clubs, Ilan have been talking to them, they all faced a similar issue and wanted to explore new ways of engaging and reactivating the membership base. And the first question we faced was, is it possible to do such processes with young people? Up to that point, we have mostly done them with adult members of membership organizations. And the interesting thing is now when we present these slides and after we conducted the processes, we got a lot of questions where, can you also do that with adults? Because I think something that really got clear to us throughout the process is that this is really possible with young people as well. So a few words on the two clubs to set the scene. So TSV Berlin-Witzenau is a club, a really old German traditional neighborhood club. It was founded late 19th century, has about 3,000 members and 20 sport departments. So wide different sports run in the club, and it is really centered in its community, which is in northern Berlin. And the interesting thing here is that it's a socioeconomically and ethnically very diverse community. So there are really people from different walks of life coming together in this club, which made it particularly interesting for us to facilitate in. And then we have FC Internationale Berlin. It was founded rather recently, about 50 years ago. And from the beginning, really, structured itself as a football club with a clear anti-discrimination stance and a clear cosmopolitan outlook on the sport. It's an integration hub really for Berlin's sport youth, and very value-driven in all it's doing. And it is smaller because it's only focused on football, but it's very mission-led and deliberatively different from a lot of clubs. So they often run initiatives against racism, against climate change. So they have been a very involved club. So for us, it was really interesting to see how those two different sport clubs would react to such an initiative, because we did basically apply the same method on two very different, in two very different settings. And that's kind of the point of this pilot. So those two clubs have been for some time trying a few things to involve their members with like mixed successes. I think in many respects they are very engaged clubs, and we're already trying a few different things. And we won basically a competition run by a former German footballer. Maybe some of you still know him, Philipp Lahm, and his foundation. And we, together with them, won this opportunity to implement two basically lottery-based youth assemblies. And they were called Team Future, Team Zukunft for TSV Wittenau, and Youth Captains for FC Internationale. And what you can see here is kind of the output of the first phase of the process. So we convened people for 2 afternoons, and at the end of the first afternoon, they created a vision mosaic. And what you see here is kind of, we really like this image of a mosaic because it's not about creating one final shared determined vision for the club, but really bringing them to think and to dream about what would the club look like if they could design it in 2 or 3 years, and so that they would love to bring all their friends to this club because it's closer to how they imagine or envision it to look like. So this is very creative. As you can see, there are people dreaming of pitches, of saunas, of different things that the club would offer. If we go to the next slide, a few more words on the process itself. So we focused on 25 members per club, aged 10 to 18. So we did a lot of thinking and also talking to experts of youth participation and engagement. And we're curious to see whether it would work with such a broad age range. For some parts of the process, we kind of subdivided it a bit so that older people would work among themselves and younger participants did. But really, for the most process, we mixed it up, and we were curious to see how it would go, and we're very surprised that it works. Even with such a broad age range, they were really engaged working together, and we felt that was kind of confirming our hypothesis. We had 2 afternoons planned of 4 hours each. There was a brief gap between those, like of roughly 3 weeks, because we also asked them to, in the meantime, ask a few of those questions to their teams, to friends, to their parents, to get even a broader take on some of the questions the clubs were wrestling. And then I already mentioned for the first afternoon, we had a lot of like team building, get to know each other, but then focused on some general feedback for the clubs and developing a future mosaic, a vision mosaic for the two clubs. And then for the second afternoon, we picked up a lot of the feedback and the future ideas they kind of wove or had woven into this mosaic and helped them draft or let them discuss and then draft specific recommendations, but crucially also think about how they could implement these recommendations themselves. And we'll soon say a bit more about that because that was something that really surprised us as well as how eager they were to get practical and to implement those recommendations themselves. Um, 4 important components maybe to know about this process overall. We chose those participants by lot. That was it's kind of our pet method because what that does, it is ensuring that you really reach those members that aren't already showing up. If you just do an open call, and you might know that from your own experience, the people who show up are those that are already very involved. And to us, it is crucial to get to involve the 90%, 95% of members who are mostly passive. So in the context of the sport clubs, those are the people that show up for training, but that wouldn't come to like membership organization meetings or other initiatives by the clubs. So that's why we opted for a lottery, and I'll say a bit more about how that was, how we implemented it exactly. Then we had facilitated workshops that we run with a team of 2 to 3 facilitators, some of those experienced with youth focused engagement and us as well. And we really, throughout this process, ensured that a lot of the work is done in small groups. If you want, this is to some extent, together with the lottery, that is the magic sauce of this process, is to ensure that they can be in small groups because that creates the psychological safety for them to really speak up and become active. And of course, if you have 4 small groups running at the same time, you can have 4 times as many people speaking at the same time and coming up with their own ideas. So that is really a crucial part of it. The third component was that we focused on real impact. Recommendations are a great starter, but we also wanted to make sure that they then think about how they can implement them themselves. And the final part is that we had this scientifically backed. So there was an evaluation process, right? Like a pre and a post evaluation form for participants, and ensured that like there was an observer present as well to draw recommendations for other clubs and processes as well. And then a final word on the outreach lottery. Important for us that we don't just go with the members who put themselves forward, but we have to, in our experience, organizations, clubs have to take that one step and find participants. So again, we had a random selection. We had like a few criteria such as age, where we wanted to ensure that the participation is broadly balanced, but we didn't stratify the sample too much for those of you who are very statistically inclined. Because we wanted to prioritize something else. For us, it wasn't crucial that the participants are statistically representative of the overall membership base, which is really hard to do. But we wanted to make sure that that most of the participants are among the 90% who would usually not show up. And how we do it is we send out a personal invitation. One of the sport clubs had a really cool like kind of pop-up cubicle that they send out by mail. The other one had a more traditional letter. But the invitation was personal. It was stressing how important that participation would be. It was really focused on making them be curious and to apply and join this process. And then probably the most important part is the active outreach, because if you send out these letters, you will probably hear back, even if you design them very well, of 20-30% of participants. But by having then members of the club call those people who have been invited but who didn't respond, who have responded that they can't join, we helped the clubs to bring like the participation rates closer to 40 and 50%, which you might know from your own experience is really, really beyond what you would usually get as a feedback on an invitation. And that way we really ensured that the people who participate are those who usually don't join these kind of activities in the club. And then we had the community council itself happening on those 2 afternoons. I already went through the process of that. Ilan, you want to take up here?
Yes, I can. So what the experience was from both clubs was that there were on both days 25 young people really engaged in bringing the association forward. And what was also surprising to us that there was rarely people dropping out. So over 90% of those who joined the first afternoon also joined the second one. And there we were a bit more pessimistic upfront, but that worked out super well. The thing which surprised us even more was that we calculated or expected that they will come up with a lot of recommendations, which then people from the club are asked to bring to reality. It turned out most of them wanted to take initiative and do something themselves. And for Wittenau, it was, for example, one young guy who started a new youth council initiative, which is also running. So even 4 months later, it's still running. And this was something the association tried to do for years, to reactivate a youth council. And it was not proposed by the association itself, but the guy wanted to start it and created a team around it. Another interesting thing is that the participants didn't know what the association offers. So they didn't know which sports, which other activities, which social activities. And they said it's super interesting and we want to organize an open club day where we can sport swap and really get to know the association as a whole, which was interesting for them. A bit similar with the FC Internationale, where they started to, okay, can we redesign one of our dressing rooms, changing rooms, and redesign it because we have one which is super cool and the rest super loosey and we don't feel well in them. Can we just change it ourselves? Or just starting a inter-podcast to be informed better, because especially as the younger the participants were, the more they complained that they don't know too much about the association and that all the digital channels are blocked by the parents. So they were really asking for a screen or a board in the entry hall to be informed without being blocked by the parents, because they have now access to digital products. And both members of the board were super happy with the process because they experienced what we just talked about, and they were proud that they made it. So what are our 5 lessons learned? Anna, you told me that's the way how you frame it and what is helpful for you. So we are happy to contribute in that way. Is young people, and it's in Germany, the cultural discourse is they don't want to participate anymore and they are just lazy. I don't know if it's the same for you. Here, it's a bit weird, the debate. And what we experienced in this pilot is they want to participate if you ask them personally and if you make the invitation attractive. So it doesn't have to be just a duty for the next 5 years, but some also enjoyable stuff where you really can work on stuff. For 2 afternoons is already a big ask, but still small enough that people feel attracted and feel like, okay, I can make it possible to join. So invest in facilitation. I don't think I have to explain it to you. For many sport associations, they sometimes think, I just do it myself. But that's also where the energy lies. If the facilitation is bad, talking helps. It's not always the case. It depends a little bit on how you do it. our learning, which we didn't do too well in the first pilot, is built for implementation initiatives and not just for recommendations. So that's also something where we were surprised that they really wanted to do something themselves and even invest more time. Of course, you have a small dropout afterwards, which is normal, but at least 10 to 20% are sticking. And from the 25 on the second day, 17, so 25 per club, 17 wanted to be engaged afterwards. And last learning, yeah, pizza is not just a nice to have gadget. So if you do something, really make it nice and make it comfortable and make something where everybody can agree to easily and be happy about it. Yeah, because it just makes a better experience as a whole. Yeah. So this is the future of membership made practical. Our mission is to bring this, at least in Germany, to every association, that they can run such processes. And especially, we think if a volunteer club with low budget can draw it, perhaps even as national association or cooperatives can too. So if it's possible there, it should be possible everywhere, in every member organizations. And we really see that new voices are reached, new perspectives are gained, and a new us is created. So the identification part, which is really super important, is organized in that way in a practical and efficient manner. And that's why we are proud to run this project. And I can also tell that we are in contact with the Philip Lahm Foundation still. Some of you still might know Philip Lahm. It's one of the best defenders there ever was. Anyhow, and he has a foundation and he sponsored this pilots. And we think about running 5 other associations this year and try to scale it on 20 associations next year. Cool. If you want to connect, please just write a mail to us, to team or to Lawrence or my address, or connect on LinkedIn. And now we are first happy to, discuss and get your messages, questions to clarify what we did.
And maybe for those who are craving a more visual take on what we did, there's a video summarizing one of the 2 processes that you can watch. I just posted the link in the chat. It's in German, but you should be able to dub it in English on YouTube.
Thank you both so much for sharing that and for sharing that in English. I wish I could say I could do the same in German, but I really can't. So it's really thank you very much for doing it. And often in this community, we've spoken about some of the quite broad themes of participatory membership. So it's really, really great to hear such a specific example of how you can do it and a practical one. And I think we work a lot in deliberative democracy, and sometimes that idea of sortition can feel like quite a big deal. How do you get that sort of quick representative group? So the sort of way of expressing how you managed to do it in quite a manageable way that wasn't too intensive, that kind of feels really achievable, was really exciting to hear. I also loved kind of hearing how starting with something that was quite relatively small and defined, sort of 2 sessions led on to kind of much more sustained participation, whether that be in the form of youth councils, and how much people were willing to commit their own ongoing time to make that happen. So something that we've spoken about in some of these sessions is that participation is a bit of a spectrum. There might be things where organizations are taking the lead, and at the other end of the spectrum, there are ones where members are taking the lead, and in the middle, there's kind of working together. And it was really nice to see how you can transition from something that might be more organizational led to start with into something where you can have things which are kind of more member led areas. So thank you very much. I know there was a specific question around kind of whether that Thea put in the chat, whether future mosaic is a written up method that others can follow. So I know what your session you described was visioning to start with. How could young people imagine what the future of the club would look like?
You want to go, Ilan, or should I?
Yeah, you go first. Yeah, please.
Yeah, I was a bit more involved with that. So there isn't. It's the short version, but like it's not rocket science either. So what we basically mixed was we did take them on a bit of in German it's called a dream journey. I'm not sure whether that's like what you would call it, but basically we asked them to close their eyes, had a bit of background music, and then asked them to imagine like how would to visualize how their club would look and feel and smell and taste like, and what they would do if they would join it in a few years' time, and it was their ideal club, so that they really would want to take their best friends and have them join them to explore this. And then we asked them to basically break up in small groups, and they had like a few like easy question prompts, and basically all of them got one like piece of the mosaic, so of the vision mosaic, that they could design just as they like to. And for this, we really wanted to make it as creative as possible. And I think we can still get a bit better, providing them with more material and then maybe a bit more prompts. But they had pencil stuffs to draw. We had like a few magazines that they could do cutouts and print it on it. But we also, if they wanted to, they could also just write down what it was that they were looking for. So this was really for them to be as creative and as open-minded as possible in drawing that mosaic. And we made it very clear that the idea here is not, this doesn't have to be realistic, this doesn't have to be logical, this doesn't have to align with what other people are drawing, this is what they would love to see. And then we had like a second step coming from this vision and say, okay, but like now, what parts of that vision could you maybe help implement in the next few months within your club?
And just to stress this one thing a bit more, even there was one guy which I was shocked by. Not it was a super nice person, but he told me it was the first time that I could just dream without thinking directly how realistic it is. So he was not trained at all in having the fantasy getting started in, but if I just dream it, it just doesn't have to be realistic. What would I do then? And this was touching for me because I think it's a necessary skill if you want to co-design society, and you always limit yourself in this way. This is just not too nice.
Yeah, I completely hear you on that. We often spend a lot of that. What if you had no restrictions or cost budgets? How can you start big and then afterwards zone into kind of what can we act on specifically? I really love the also the sort of visually bringing it together with people each adding their own part of the mosaic. It's really nice. I can see that Dan has put in the chat that, do you think this work is better for organizations with smaller membership bases, or do you think it could be scaled up? I know you also work with really, really large chambers of commerce and cooperatives. So yeah, what's your view on that?
I can go, like, for us, the size is not too important. So we work with organizations who have at least a few hundred members, because otherwise this idea of sortition is not so helpful. And usually the resources are even more scarce. So there we think along. We are happy to think along also with other formats on how to activate passive members, but it's not our focus. And I would say the bigger the organization gets, the more important it gets. So that's perhaps more the rule of thumb, because the smaller the organization is, the better the personal networks work. And what we do on a structural level with this sortition-based approach in asking people directly, personally to engage, this is what happens anyway in daily life. But with the sortition, we get those who are not active themselves. And yeah, the bigger you are, the more important is your work that way. I think that's something we can state.
And Dan, just checking in, do come in if you want any follow-ups to that, because I think you're coming from co-op group, so lots of members. But yeah, the community council model, I'm right in thinking, Ilan, is something that so you've described it, used at quite a local level, but you've also used it as a model, that sortition model for much larger organizations too. I'll hold for also, yeah, either Dan, whether you want to come in, or any other questions people might have.
Perhaps it's helpful to give one other insight. We also work with a cooperative, or we are discussing how we work together with 40,000 members. So rather huge organization, and they will have board elections next year. And they are super afraid there's a really small minority which really shoots against the present board. And they are super afraid that the passive members and the silent ones are getting so annoyed by it that they will drop out. And they asked, like, how can we make sure that the whole discourse is not just run by those people with too much time and too much opinion, as we used to say, but rather the normal member. And this is also a good case which needs then also other communication on top to it, but where this sortition way can also bring more fact-based and a collaborative form of information sharing and decision making.
Yeah. And that confidence to know that you've definitely got in the room, you brought in those sort of that's cross spectrum of the member base, the normal members, and got beyond the 2%. Maybe we were going to go into breakout groups just to give you a bit of a chance to chat to others, to have a reflection on what stood out to you from the example. What does this make you think about for your own organization's membership? So perhaps we do that now.